lift your eyes. There's a sunrise waiting in the skies. The road is rough, but you're not alone. Take my hand, we'll make it home.
Good morning and welcome to you all. We invite you into this, our spiritual community of hope, courage, and compassion. So take a deep breath and now release it as we open our hearts and minds and enter into this special place today. As is customary whenever we gather together, we begin by lighting a candle. Our candle flame represents the flaming chalice that is the symbol of the living tradition of our faith. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to share a reading with you that was brought to our attention, and I believe Lisa found this, and we just felt it was a beautiful reflection of what we're going to hear today from our speaker. What moves the stars? The medieval answered love. The moderns answered laws. We are accustomed to call the first poetry and the second science, as if poetry were a dream and science a thing of iron. But history tells us a more curious tale. The word law was borrowed when Descartes and Newton set themselves to explain the motions of the heavens. They went not first to the fields and the stars, but to courts and commonwealth for their language. They spoke of commands and obedience and regulation. For a while, everybody knew this was a metaphor, an image taken from human rule and laid upon nature. Then, as so often happens, the metaphor was forgotten and the image petrified into a fact. As Ben Clark writes, the language of law, once a metaphor, became the very structure of reality itself. And this is why the question matters. The test of a true account of the world is not only that it can be argued about, but it can be lived in. Truth, as Jonathan McCormick writes, is a habit, a habitat, a pattern that we love, move, and have our being in. A universe governed by love is one in which every creature, from the falling stone to the circling stars, has its proper place. It is not a wilderness of unrelated forces, but a place where things are meant for one another. It is not exile. It is perpetual.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker now. Ms. Helen Pluckrose is a British political and cultural commentator and a liberal humanist. Her work has addressed ideologically biased and shoddy academic publishing within cultural and identity studies and traced the evolution of postmodern thought into critical social justice activism. She writes about why we should care about what is true, individual liberty, and our shared humanity. Ultimately, Helen wants to persuade people to value evidence-based epistemology and consistently liberal principles. Thank you for being with us, Helen. Unmute yourself and take it away.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you can all hear me now.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I seem to have developed a habit of causing small storms on Substack and social media. Most recently, it was about Easter eggs. I wished people joy of Chocolate Egg Day and was accused of not respecting the sacredness of the day to Christians. Before that, it was about Christmas trees. I had said that they could be enjoyed by people of all faiths and none, and that decorating an evergreen tree, symbolizing life continuing even in the depths of winter, is something we can all share, regardless of belief. Bizarrely, that time I was accused of promoting Islam. In both cases, what I was encountering were attempts to fix a rigid ideological meaning onto these celebrations, to define what they really mean and who gets to claim them. A significant number of people believed two things about what I had written. First, that I was deliberately demeaning and mocking their faith, and secondly, that I was stripping celebrations of meaning, reducing them to something shallow and empty. I wasn't doing either of those things. I was thinking about connection. What I was doing, what I thought I was very obviously doing, was celebrating the larger, more universal meaning of these occasions, the thing that actually brings people back to them year after year across cultures and belief. Gathering people together, shared rituals, family, friends, connection, feasting, joy. In the UK, Easter is often a modest, largely secular affair. The word itself is associated with dawn and the return of the sun, with spring. It involves chocolate eggs, homemade paper bonnets, simple crafts, games, egg hunts, sometimes maypole dancing. These traditions are designed not to cost much, if anything, but to bring people together, for play, for laughter, for shared experience. The point is simply to come together and enjoy one another's company. And we do this not just at Easter, but throughout the year, midwinter, spring, harvest. We mark time together. We create rituals around these transitions. The changing of the seasons is significant to us. It's not a coincidence that this is what humans of all religions and none do when they celebrate anything at all. We bring together the people we love. We eat, we talk, we laugh, we reconnect. And what struck me about the reactions to those posts was not simply that people disagreed with me, which they insist on doing all the time. It's that they seemed to be an assumption running beneath both criticisms. An assumption that if meaning is not rooted in something divine or eternal, then it's not really meaning at all. That there can be no real meaning in our grounded, embodied experiences of human connection. We are nothing without a belief in a God, a dogma, or an afterlife. As one often repeated meme puts it, the logical conclusion of atheism is nihilism. The logical conclusion of nihilism is suicide. Therefore, the logical conclusion of atheism is suicide. I could not disagree more strongly with this. Like many of you, I hold values which fit the label of liberal humanist. As a liberal, I believe in the inherent dignity and worth of every individual human being. I believe that people should not be constrained by any demographic that they belong to, but should be free to pursue their own fulfillment, to form their own connections, to make their own meaning. I believe in pluralism, the value of a society in which people with a wide range of beliefs, values, customs, and traditions can live together, share ideas, argue about ideas, and try collectively to work out what is true and how to live well together. I believe in universalism, and as a humanist, I place human beings at the center of my moral concern. It is human thriving that I want to increase and human suffering that I want to reduce. I feel connected to other people not because we share a doctrine, but because we share common humanity. And yet, we are a troublesome species. We are endlessly inclined to divide ourselves into tribes and factions. We construct tribal identities and form in-groups and out-groups. We adopt narratives in which the in-group is good and the out-group is bad, and we filter our reality through these stories using motivated reasoning and confirmation bias. And once we do that, the degree of hostility that we can feel towards other human beings, people who are, in almost every meaningful sense, just like us, can be extremely intense. Some of you will know me from my work addressing this within the critical social justice or woke movement. In 2020 and 21, I began hearing from Unitarians in America and Canada telling me that this divisive ideology, which rejected individual dignity, scorned viewpoint diversity, and denied our common humanity, was trying to coerce them into affirming a single rigid dogma. This, they told me, was entirely contrary to what Unitarianism was about, and it strongly resembled the most rigid, narrow, and dogmatic approaches to traditional religions. I agree. We humans are groupish and we love these dogmatic narratives. That aspect of our nature is unlikely to ever change. What we do with it, however, is within our control. We can narrow our minds and our sympathies into an ideological dogma and become tribal, callous, even cruel, dehumanizing those we consider not one of us. Or we can broaden our minds, expand our circle of empathy, honor our shared humanity, and choose to prioritize it. Nothing human is alien to me. There are those who believe that this love of our fellow man and woman can only exist if it is grounded in belief in God, that without such a belief we have nothing to root our morality, our care for others, our sense of meaning and purpose in. And so sometimes we see people of religious faith expressing pity or even contempt for those of us who don't hold such beliefs, suggesting that without a divine framework and faith in an afterlife, we must be living small, diminished, hopeless lives devoid of meaning. Then there are atheists who respond with equal contempt, who see religious belief as a kind of comforting illusion, something people cling to in order to avoid confronting the reality of their own mortality. They will say things like, "We are just animals on a small planet in a vast, indifferent universe. The universe does not owe you meaning. We don't matter in the grand scheme of things, and we should accept that and get on with it." But what's striking to me is that both of these positions actually share the same underlying assumption. They both assume that for human life to be meaningful, it must matter in some ultimate cosmic sense, that it must matter to something larger than humans, something external to us, something that endures forever. And if that is the standard, if meaning must be eternal and cosmic, then yes, human life will always fall short. But why should that be the standard? Humans are animals, yes. We are a particular kind of animal, one with large brains, complex emotions, and an extraordinary capacity for connection. We are meaning-making creatures. We do not passively receive meaning from the universe, we generate it. We are creatures who can look at the world and not only perceive it, but discover true things about it. We can imagine futures that do not yet exist and work together to bring them into being. We can take raw materials and shape them into buildings, music, literature, ideas. We can build institutions, traditions, cultures. We can pass knowledge across generations so that each new generation does not have to begin again from nothing. We can reflect on our own thoughts, question our own assumptions, change our minds. We can feel empathy for people we have never met in places we have never been. We can care about principles like truth and justice and try to live in accordance with them. We can create beauty for no reason other than that we find it beautiful. And we can be horrible, stupid, and irrational, of course. We are prone to error, to bias, to tribalism. But we're also capable of recognizing those tendencies and trying to correct for them. We're capable of learning and growing. And the primary source of our meaning has always been other humans. Is there anything more meaningful than falling in love? The initial spark, and then the slow, patient work of building a life together, of growing that love over time. What matters more than family, organic or chosen? Knowing that you are wanted, that you matter, that people hold you in their hearts, that there are people in the world to whom you can always go home. What about friendship? That moment of recognition where you meet someone and realize, you are the same kind of weirdo as me, or maybe a different kind of weirdo. Either way it works, and these are the relationships that enrich your life for decades. Or the experience of encountering a mind that changes yours, someone who introduces you to a new idea, or articulates something you had only dimly sensed, and suddenly things fall into place. And of course, for many people, meaning is also found in making new humans, and watching them grow and produce humans of their own. This is not trivial. This is at the core of what it means to be a human. Our meaning and purpose, no matter what other beliefs we might have, are centered in our humanity. Other animals could be argued to have meaning and purpose on various metrics, but it does not look like ours. Your specific purpose and meaning might look like professional ambition and success, but this would be meaningless without other people. You could be the fastest runner in the world, or the greatest mathematician, or you might have designed the most fantastic product. But if you're doing this alone on a desert island, what does it signify? Perhaps your meaning is to be found in the creation of art, but if you never showed it to anyone, would it still have so much meaning? You might find your meaning and purpose in raising children or caring for your family, but this is at the pinnacle of caring for other people. For some people, their stated meaning and purpose is the worship of God, of course, but such individuals typically do this in family and community-orientated ways. Very few people choose to become hermits, and when they have, historically, this has typically been presented as the ultimate form of self-denial, because it withholds from the individual the thing that people need most, other people. So human meaning is deeply oriented towards other humans. Does this strike you as inadequate? Does conceptualizing yourself as a member of a species of big-brained ape, fleetingly existing on a wet rock circling a big ball of gas within a vast universe, feel small and depressing and desolate to you? For some people, clearly it does. To me, it feels awe-inspiring. The simple myths and stories about gods and creation seem small and shallow and uninspiring in comparison, and very much the product of humans trying to make sense of their existence and find comfort and security during times in which the information we have today was simply not available to them. Perhaps a God exists, and this is all part of its plan. If so, that would be very exciting. But currently dominant concepts of God make it something very much like a human, and I see little reason to assume that would be the case. Why would a divine superbeing manifest as a father, a monarch, or a judge? Those are simple human archetypes. Why would it manifest love, sociality, compassion, a sense of justice, and a desire to create and build things? Those are the traits of our species of social mammal that evolved to help us thrive and survive. Why would it wish to be worshipped, demand loyalty, and experience anger and jealousy, and a desire to punish dissent? Those are the products of human defensiveness, insecurity, and a drive to maintain control amid constant threats from other humans. No, this concept of God looks, like everything else we do, like a manifestation of human nature. A very narrow conception. I do not wish to be so constrained. I want to embrace and explore what it means to be human and how to live as a human among humans in a way that maximize the joys and pleasures and well-being of our species and minimize the suffering and despair that we can also experience so intensely. Why should the meaning you find in relationships, your work, your community, be regarded as second-rate simply because it's grounded in human experience rather than in a specific religious doctrine? Human experience is vast. The world of relationships, ideas, emotion, creativity, shared understanding. It is too rich and layered for one person to take it in fully in one lifetime. Is this not enough? And when we look at our origins and how we get here, that sense of wonder only increases. We know that life began in the sea, and over immense stretches of time it diversified. Eventually, some creatures came onto land. Among them were our ancestors, small mammals, living in a world dominated by dinosaurs, surviving quietly for millions of years until that world changed to accommodate them. Mammals diversified, primates emerged, then apes, and eventually not one kind of human, but many. I particularly like to think about this. The Neanderthals, robust, adapted to cold climates. Homo erectus, travellers across vast distances. Homo floresiensis, small and distinct, the hobbits. For a time they existed together, and then over time they disappeared, and we, Homo sapiens, remained. Why us? Not because we're the strongest, fastest, or more physically impressive. We're none of those things. Many hypotheses exist, but the most plausible is that we outlasted other humans because of a combination of traits. our language, our imagination, our adaptability, and above all, our ability to form complex, lasting social bonds beyond immediate kin. We connect. And through those connections, we did something extraordinary. We spread across the world. We crossed harsh and dangerous environments, ice ages, deserts, forests. It was never very likely that we would survive this far, but we have. We adapted, learned, shared knowledge, built tools, then better tools. We created cultures, traditions, systems of understanding. We told stories to make sense of the world and our place within it. We formed civilizations. For most of the history of those civilizations, life remained hard in a very literal sense. Survival was uncertain, disease was common, child mortality was heartbreakingly high. And yet we learned, we built, we improved, unevenly but steadily. And now for many of us, we live in a time that would have seemed miraculous to our ancestors. We have a reasonable expectation that our children will live to be adults. Many diseases can be treated or prevented. We can communicate instantly across vast distances, like right now. We can access knowledge accumulated over thousands of years. We can learn, create, and connect in ways that would once have been unimaginable. This is not the result of some cosmic, eternal, perfect, omniscient force outside humanity. It is the cumulative result of human beings, imperfect, curious, collaborative human beings, working, learning, and building over generations. When I think about that, I find it very difficult to understand those who believe that focusing on humans is small, is meaningless, lacks purpose, lacks hope. I feel extraordinarily fortunate to be part of it. It must, though, be conceded that to be human is to die, and in the atheistic conception, to cease to exist. To be human is also to know this and to have to try to make peace with it. The anguish inherent here is less to do with one's own death. If those of us who have a materialist atheistic conception are correct, and self is brain and can be assumed to die with the brain, we cannot experience death in any way. The pain comes overwhelmingly from our capacity to connect and love so deeply, and then to experience the agonizing grief at the loss of another human. It comes again from our humanity and our human connections. I struggle still to accept that my parents are gone. And for most of history, being human has involved having to psychologically survive the deaths of one's children. It is unsurprising that human myth-making has repeatedly included conceptions of an afterlife in which our departed loved ones are waiting for us. The preciousness of life, however, is surely related to the fact that it ends. We have limited time in which to love, connect, build lives, learn, explore, and experience joy and fulfillment. We do not typically regard things as worthless if they end. Would a good meal, a good book, or good sex not start to pall and lose their meaning and pleasure if they went on forever? Their finitude is what produces the incentive to make them good. This surely applies to human lives as well. Our knowledge that our lives are short is a powerful drive of the will to extend them, make them more comfortable, more rewarding, more fulfilling, and to create a world in which children are not expected to die, and which protects each individual's right to stay alive and pursue happiness and fulfillment. We can use our time to reduce suffering where we can. Sometimes that means large-scale efforts, supporting institutions, policies, and systems that make life better for more people. But often it means something much more immediate and local, being kind when it is easier not to be, listening when someone needs to be heard, offering help when we're able. We can use our time to create, to make things that did not exist before, whether that's art, ideas, projects, or simply moments of joy for the people around us. We can use our time to learn, to deepen our understanding of the world and of one another, and to remain open to the possibility that we might be mistaken and might need to change our minds. And we can use our time to build communities in which others can do the same, spaces in which people feel valued, respected, and able to flourish. none of this requires that our lives be eternal in order to matter. It requires only that we matter to one another. Whether we believe in God or a higher power, or in the unique specialness of our shared humanity, or in something else entirely, I think this is something we should be able to agree on. We do not need to assume that those who locate meaning differently are empty or misguided or morally deficient. We do not need to sneer at one another. We do not need to insist that meaning must be cosmic and eternal in order to be real. Instead, we can recognize the extraordinary good fortune we have to exist at all, and to exist at the same time as the other people with whom we currently connect. We can value our humanity, and we can choose to build lives and communities and meaning around other humans. Because whatever else may or may not be true about the universe, this much seems clear. Our capacity to connect with one another, to care, to understand, to support, to challenge, to inspire, that is what gives our lives meaning. That is what makes us human. That is enough. I am done.
Thank you so much, Helen. That made me smile in quite a few places. So now what we're going to do is, if you have your thinking caps on and have been paying attention, I hope, we can have sharing with Helen. We can ask her questions. We can comment on what we just heard. And I would ask you to raise your hands and I will call on you. And everybody, please stay muted unless you're talking. So, does anybody have any comments or questions for Helen? There's Susan. Go right ahead, Susan.
Yeah, my first question should be how do I raise my hand, but never have figured that out. Helen, thank you. My goodness, that was really, really delightful. And not only did I have my thinking cap on, my thinking cap just went into a gear that it hasn't been in a while. So thank you so much. I have a couple of questions. I'll ask one, and then if there's time after other people have had their turn, I'll ask that as well. You really sort of started summing it up. Well, you summed it up beautifully. But I loved when you were talking at the end about offering help, offering a smile when the world makes it easier not to, or when it feels easier not to. And honestly, that spoke to me on on a lot of emotional levels because I try very hard to do that and to be that in life without literally ever, expecting it of others. And when it does happen, it catches me off guard, but it gives me a joy that gives great meaning to my life, knowing that not only I can maybe offer that joy to other people, but that it is available to me. And that's I think a defining characteristic. Sorry, didn't expect to get emotional. But I do want to ask you, like, if you could sum up, we all know somebody, right, that has a pure white aura around them, right? They're just good. They bring good, they acknowledge good, they foster good, and you'd be hard pressed to say they're not perfect, except to say that it's perfect. Not it's imperfect to be perfect. Where do you think that comes from? Because there's people that I've always defined as they were born good and spent their life building upon it. But there's people that have a pure soul, really. How would you say this is how that person is versus Joshua?
Well, I would always come from that biological sort of material standpoint, and I do think that this is something that we all have to think about. I think at root so much comes down to psychological traits. we like to think that we're evaluating different ideas and we're coming to certain conclusions, but so much of the time, our own personality, our own psychology tends to draw us towards one set of ideas or another. It could make you want to be religious or not religious. It could make you conservative, or it could make you progressive. And I think once you're is to be self-aware about this, the kind of just really lovable person that you are just too good to be true. How are you managing this that you're speaking of? I think they've been they've been gifted with a certain sort of pro-social traits, certain empathetic, certain compassionate traits, and they have then made the best of that, and we should absolutely admire and respect these people and make sure that they are taking time for themselves. But then there's also the people who don't have those traits, people who have a temper, people who feel a lot of jealousy or anger or a resentment, and then perhaps, of course, things that have happened in their childhood, their own experiences as well, have made them sour and suspicious. And so when we see those people who are making good steps at being self-aware about these, about overcoming them, I think that we need to make sure that we are giving those people who have really struggled to be pro-social, to do the right thing, who have recognized this, who are trying to get better. This is where I think we need to be forgiving. We need to be encouraging. We need to set things up in ways that help people to do better and be better. And I think that the kind of really loving, delightful person that you started by talking about, they're often at the forefront of this, aren't they?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have any question or comment? I see Michael. Unmute and go ahead, Michael.
But I don't know what you know about our origin. We were members, all but a couple of us, of the same Unitarian Universalist Church until a little more than 5 years ago, when this division that you spoke of at the beginning began to appear in our church. And we worked, I thought, really hard to try to find a rapprochement in that, and we failed. And ultimately, and I take from what you said, in order to maintain a sense of belonging among those of us who are like-minded, we became clannish. So this is our little, open hearts and mind clan when we left the other clan. And there's still moments when I have such sadness about that, because I miss that larger community, even though I no longer felt welcomed in it. And I know that there's still bitterness among some of our members about how we were treated in that. And you just, you make me think about the sorrow of that breach that I think maybe I haven't entirely processed yet. So thanks a lot. I understood you perfectly, and I was trying to find a way to make a joke about the old joke that we are two countries divided by a common language, but I failed to find a way to do that.
Well, I should have leaned more into my Cockney accent to give you more of a feeling. But yeah, I think when I was hearing particularly, it was in communication with a Canadian group in 2020 who were really trying to find some common ground, to try to stay to the critical social justice activists. Look, we know that your intentions seem to be good here. We know that you want to to change the way that everybody thinks, the way that everybody speaks. You've become very sort of empowered feeling by this sense of purpose. But can you not see how you're narrowing everything down, and you're making things mean and small. You're dividing people. This is just going to cause a terrible schism, and of course it did. And my hope now is that with a lot of the people who really got on a bandwagon there. And I think some people, of course, are cynical. They are opportunistic. Sometimes they're drawn to these kinds of movements because it gives them an ability to be cruel and to be divisive. But I don't think that's the majority of people. I think there are a lot of very good people, particularly young ones, who got swept up in that, feeling that they were doing the right thing. And now there's a waning, and some of them are realizing that they have been caught up in a kind of collective madness which did not achieve any of their goals and only alienated people. And I think that I hope that at some point you and other Unitarians will be able to have a number of people trying to build those bridges that you tried to build with them before, and that you'll be able to help them do that.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Michael. I see Carol's hand raised. Carol, would you unmute and go ahead?
Okay. Thank you for your talk. It was very interesting to me. I'm particularly interested in any thoughts you might have about the genetic determinants of personality traits. For example, I'm going to tell a quick story. There was a feral dog who had her puppies in the middle of sort of in the middle of nowhere behind a medical school, and I wanted to go see them. So my husband and I drove not too close because we didn't want to scare them. But then we got out of the car. Mom ran away. The first puppy comes out. They can barely stand up. That first puppy comes out growling and fierce. He can barely walk. It's like he's going to kill you. The second one comes out wagging her tail and falling all over herself, just being friendly and lovely. The third one comes out and is so anxious he immediately rolls over and pees all over himself. And then I don't remember the others. I was so taken by the first three. And I shared that story with he's now deceased, but a faculty member at the University of Texas. And he'd written a book called Strangers in the Nest, in which his contention was that siblings who are raised in the same family are no more alike than any other people in the world. And I thought, that's interesting. And so I'm interested in any thoughts you have about how genetics can inform what we call our personality traits.
Well, my understanding, I have a layman's interest in biology and particularly in evolutionary psychology.
Mm.
And there's a wonderful new book by Steve Stewart Williams coming out, 6 billion Years of Sex Differences. And he's wonderful with his ethics, the way he does this. But every single trait is to some degree heritable.
Mhm.
So, and we do see this within families and twin studies and sibling studies where people have been moved to different families, but they have the same parents. We know that genetics is really has a very, very strong influence, and parenting style, unless there's real sort of serious trauma going on there, has much less of an effect. But of course, this does not mean, and anybody who's had more than one child will know this, that you're going to produce sort of carbon copies. These genes for behavior, for psychology, are so varied that you can have 5 children who are really very different in their nature, but they're still going to have a lot of these same building blocks. I think the problem when people are resistant to thinking about how genetics can play into things is that they feel that it condemns people to be stuck within especially if the traits are negative. And I think the way to address that is to say, well, no, you might have a tendency to some kind of trait which is less desirable, which you wish you didn't have, but you also have the ability to become aware of it. There's almost no trait, I think, that can't be adapted and turned around into something positive. And so I think when people really want to have a blank slatist idea where, if we just treat everybody really, really well and the same, everybody can achieve anything, and there won't be any of these sort of damaging psychological traits, is to see us as both as genetically as built on genetics, but with the ability to grow, adapt, and improve.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes I think we're more hardwired than we like to admit, but that doesn't mean that you can't do exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
Mhm.
Time for one more question. Looks like Mike's hand is up. Mike, please unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks. I'm leaving my video off because of low bandwidth problems this morning.
Mhm.
I considered myself a humanist before a UU, and I had always been disappointed that humanism is so little acknowledged in the UU faith tradition. In some cases, people are actively hostile to it. But to me, it is the source of the future of where we're going. Um, so thank you for this wonderful support of humanism. Also, thank you for your support of evolutionary psychology. All religions and economic systems are based on some assumptions on human nature, which it turns out are not very accurate. We've learned a lot about human nature in the last few decades, thanks to evolutionary psychology. And I support the idea of bringing that into our understanding of both religion and society and how we cooperate and how we build a better society. And I wish more people would embrace that and understand it better. We do have inherited uh, traits that are not well adapted to modern society, and it pays to know what those are and to work to, say, weaken them and conversely strengthen those traits like cooperation and compassion that are well adapted and much, much needed in our modern society. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, you've inspired me, Mike. I've had a piece in process for nearly a year now, called "Why We Must Work with Human Nature and Not Against It," that speaks to quite a lot of the things that you raised there. This that we have to maximize the best qualities that we have, and those qualities that we have, which may have served us well in our ancestral past, our tribalism, our tendency to create in groups and out groups, our tendency to use very rough heuristics, which can lead to prejudice and our cognitive biases, all of these things which have presumably have served us well at some point. If we now need to have systems that are aware of them, that can mitigate them. And I'm going to finish that piece. I'm going to bump it up the list. And I think as well, when we understand things, particularly I've had difficulty, and this is one of the reasons I had to leave academia, when we're looking at psychological sex differences. A lot of people think, well, if we accept too many of those to exist, then we start saying, well, men are like this and women are like that, and we confine people and we disadvantage them. But in fact, if you have a good, because we're overlapping species, there aren't any traits that only exist in one sex or another. They exist in different distributions. And also there's the problem where we tend to misunderstand them. And what I find overall is if you have somebody who's taking a very negative view, or all men are like this, they're all boorish, violent, aggressive people, or all women are like this, they're also volatile and emotional, and you just say, okay, here is the reality. This is how women can differ on average to men, and this is why, and this is what it looks like. And then I find that you then have women saying, that's quite nice, actually. That's quite a good trait of men, and men saying that's really very endearing. I was, yes. How do you think these traits came about in the first place? We sexually selected them. We like these traits, and that's something I want to do a bit more of, is to try and work on the tone, just sort of cooling down the battle of the sexes by sort of increasing understanding.
Mhm.
Well, that would be novel.
I try. I'm not sure I'll succeed, but I will try.
Thank you for your question, Mike. And now we're going to go to our next video called Small Kindnesses.
from 365 Poems for Life, compiled by Ali Aziri. Small Kindnesses by Danusha Lamaris. I've been thinking about the way, when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by, or how strangers still say, "Bless you," when someone sneezes, a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we are saying. And sometimes, when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot, and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them, and for them to smile back, for the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire. Only these brief moments of exchange. What if they are the true dwelling of the holy, these fleeting temples we make together when we say, "Here, have my seat. Go ahead. You first. I like your hat."
And now we go to Michael.
Well, thank you, Helen, for gracing us with your thoughtful reflection. You've left us with much to ponder and incorporate. I hope you have stimulated some conversations in the fellowship and outside. And now we extinguish the flame of this candle to end our service, but not the light that we feel and that we spread to others. So please, everyone, go in peace, go in kindness. We need you. The world needs you. Blessed be. Amen.
So this concludes our service, and some of you are ready to get on with your day. And if you're in Central Texas, that might mean getting misted upon with this beautiful rain that we're getting. And Helen, back out to your sea walking or your seaside walking. We're all so envious of you for that right now, but glad that you have that. And so we're going to say goodbye and send people off with love that need to go. But if you want to stick around, we'll have joys and concerns, and we can share that with each other. So if you're going, go with love. We love you, and we'll see you next time. And for those of you who can stay, Joan, are you willing and able to facilitate? Okay. All right. Bye if you're leaving. Yay if you're sticking around for joys and concerns. Helen, you're welcome to stay, but we also know you might need to get on with your day. So, bye.
Well, thank you for having me. It was lovely
Thank
to
you.
meet
Thank
all.
you, Helen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.